we had one false start. We took a bunch of money, like I think it was at least two, maybe 3 million euros, that we'd built up in the company, and we built this product called Lookup Point, which looked brilliant. I remember I showed it to the Microsoft product development team in Seattle, the people who built Microsoft Office, because it was the thing that sits inside Microsoft Office. I got a standing ovation. I rang my business partner. I said, "This is it. We've made it." It's you know, it's like start looking at new houses now. But it just turned out like what we didn't realize, or certainly what I didn't realize, is we built a mass market product that would require like a multiple of what we had in resources to go to market effectively. Like it was a thing that anybody using Microsoft Office around the world would add in to their solution. And yeah, we just didn't have the resources or even the experience to kind of have a global kind of go to market strategy.
John Corley, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks a million. Great to be here, Connor.
Let's start with Spanish Point Technologies. What do you do? Who are the customers? And if you could share maybe just one number or a few numbers as to the kind of scale of it, whatever you're comfortable with, revenue, number of employees, that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. So Spanish Point Technologies, we're a software company. We started out as a purely services based software company, so doing custom built projects for people around the Microsoft platform. And we've transitioned over the last 5 to 6 years to be much more of a product and services company. So we've got our own software products, one key one called the matching engine for the music industry, and we sell that around the world. So today we've 120 people. Our revenue is in and around 27 million euros for this financial year, which ends actually in July, and growing really strongly, growing 30% a year for the last 3 years.
Is it, or did it start as an MSP? Is that the right terminology for this kind of a business?
It's a common way of describing it, although we set out to be a little bit different. So we were, like my background is as a software engineer, and we were a company of software engineers. So we approached everything from a pure software development perspective. And we were lucky in that the cloud came along reasonably quickly after we set up the company. And with the advent of the cloud, everything became software defined. So infrastructure, servers, networking, rather than them being kind of set up manually by people or pulled out of boxes, they were defined in software in the cloud. And that really helped us.
And was it, just kind of give me an example, was it kind of off the shelf softwares initially, or was it developing custom software for companies?
Yeah, developing custom software for companies. Again, where the company started, our core idea really was, when we set up, was that there was a new way of developing software that was emerging that wasn't custom developing everything, but using custom development to integrate together some key components that you could take off the shelf from large vendors. And Microsoft was evolving themselves to get, to not just be a software company that works on operating systems and Microsoft Office, but to start providing pieces of enterprise software. So we took those two things and said, hey, we have an opportunity to build innovative solutions much more quickly by kind of reusing these components as part of an overall solution, but using our software development skills to build them. And we've an opportunity to be a new type of partner for Microsoft, a type they don't have. They've always had partners that kind of sold licenses and that did kind of, manage print services and stuff like that. But we didn't really want to do any of that stuff because we thought it was a kind of low margin area and not that exciting, to be honest with you. You weren't really solving kind of hard business problems. So that was the genesis of the company. And that worked really well for us in the beginning.
Is that changing now, John, with AI? Like what I'm led to believe, right, is that you can spin up a sales force. You know, it's much easier without the number of people to create integrations between these softwares and to get them all talking and to, you know, get them doing new things. Is it changing as much as people would lead me to believe?
I think it's like all big shifts, I think, in the software industry over time. The kind of short-term effects are exaggerated, but sometimes the long-term effects are underestimated. Like if you go back to the dot-com era, like when I was working in a systems integration company, this was before setting up Spanish Point to the dot-com era. And my job was going around both England and Ireland helping people build essentially e-commerce sites. And like the thoughts at the time were that every business had to be an internet business or else it was dead. You had to have an e-commerce presence. And you had to transform your business model to be an e-commerce kind of type business. And then, so there was a lot of money made. People, like I remember going traveling the north of England. I think we set up in one trip, I might have signed up 3 or 4 customers from golf retail shops through to people selling light bulbs, all of all of whom needed an e-commerce, kind of website because that was what the trend was. Then obviously there was a little bit of there was not a little bit of a correction, there was a large correction. So in the short term, the effect of the internet was overestimated there. But in the long term, you look now, every business uses the internet. It uses e-commerce in some shape or form, but not every business is an e-commerce business. And I think it will be the same with AI.
Well, tell me about what's the equivalent now with AI, right? Because it can be hard. Well, it's a little bit easier maybe in hindsight to look at what happened through the dot com, but you worked through that,
Yeah.
right? Which is very interesting. Okay, people were setting up e-commerce businesses. What are people excited about now? You know, what are they setting up, or what are they putting in place that they're hoping will kind of pay off in the long term?
Yeah, like people are really trying to automate like big chunks of things using agentic software, and it started out, you know, essentially being let's use kind of chat enabled systems to synthesize information in the business and give us answers. And now it's moved on to let's actually create agents that take actions on the insights it gleans from the information. And, that AI, those AI methodologies are massively important to us in Spanish Point because our music industry solution is only possible through advancements in AI. Like that system, the matching engine it distributes 1.2 billion euros in royalties, or it's on track to do that this year. And it's across 13 different territories in the world and pays out over 500 million creators, people who write music or who publish music. But the big problem that AI helped us solve was there was a long tail in the music industry where because the data volumes are so big, like if you imagine every time somebody, I don't know, watches a Minecraft video, if there's background music in it, that music is a usage of somebody's IP, and our system will get a transaction for that, figure out what the song is, who owns the copyright for it, and make sure that person gets paid a tiny fraction of a cent. So if a human being had to do that, it would cost more money than the actual royalties earned. So there was always a big long tail in the music industry where it wasn't efficient to process the royalties for usually the people who needed the money the most. Because the people who were in the top of the funnel, if you like, were the most prolific and most popular songwriters and publishers. So they always got paid, but the people who didn't get paid were the people who were struggling, probably working a part-time job, but they had some royalties that but they could never get paid it because it wasn't efficient to do it. So the big innovation in our product was to leverage the latest advances in AI to automate as much as possible of that stuff, to do something that couldn't be done before, as opposed to displace humans in doing something.
And has that business, have you only started that business since AI, or was it kind of there and you were doing it in a different way and AI has just kind of helped boost it?
Yeah, we started out maybe 6 years ago, just at the real, little bit before the start of generative AI. We'd used machine learning models very early on as a core part of the system, and then we evolved that over time to really take advantage of some of the advancements in AI. Even I think 2 months ago, we launched a new AI module that allows people to explore the royalties that they've earned in natural language, interact with, all the information that's captured about them so that they can find out exactly how much money they're earning, what the trends are, which songs are performing better than others in what markets, all that kind of information.
And would they, so just my understanding, I actually have a client who's a music distributor in the UK. So I have some, when I say I've seen it and I kind of, I know what their business looks like. But my understanding from that side of things is that the distributors say, there's 100 distributors that actually release the music onto platforms such as YouTube and all the rest of it. And then those platforms essentially distribute back the royalties back to the distributor, and they send them out to the artist, essentially, or the agents of the artist, and that kind of thing. In the example that you gave there, and maybe I'm getting too into the weeds here, right? But who pays? Like, let's say there's music going on in the background. Is it the person recording that video that pays ultimately, or is it is it YouTube, or who is it that's kind of paying for that?
The royalties that our system deals with is the copyright for both. Like, there's different types of copyright, but the most common one is performing right, and that's really about the people who wrote the music, not the artist who's performing it, but the actual people who wrote the music, and usually the publishing company who has signed a deal with the writer to promote that song so that people will record it. Now, sometimes the person writing the song is the same as the person who's performing it. But a lot of the times that's not the case. And some of the people who earn lots of royalties are people you haven't really heard of because they've wrote lots of really, hit songs for lots of popular music artists. So, so the way it kind of works broadly is that in every geography in the world, there's usually two or three different not for profit organizations called CMOs, collective rights management organizations, that represent creators in that territory. In Ireland, it's an organization called IMRO. In the UK, it's called PRS. And right around the world, there's each country has at least one, but some countries have a lot more than one. And our software is targeted at those CMOs. And what so if you want to use music in a territory, you have to have a license from the CMO in that territory. So if you want to set up a new radio station in Ireland, you would have to get a license from IMRO. Or if you wanted to stream music in a big international streaming services in the Irish market, you would have to get a license from IMRO. Because the license from IMRO essentially tells the CMO, hey, you can play any music in Ireland, and we'll take the license fee you give us for doing that, and we'll find the right person to pay from the music that you play. You just have to submit a lot of metadata on a monthly basis, and then we'll stick that into a system, which is in our case the matching engine, and it will take those billions of transactions and figure out which songs are played, who owns the copyright for each song, and divide out the money proportionally based on some quite complicated algorithm essentially.
Okay, so IMRO are kind of the customer almost in this
For us
instance. Okay, yeah.
in Ireland, but like we're in 13 company or actually over 13 countries now, when like at least one CMO in each of those territories.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how a business like that kind of evolves from what you were doing previously? So it's always interesting, how people get into certain businesses, and that, I suppose, the music industry isn't small, right? And it's everyone kind of listens to music, but it seems niche because there's actually are there's so few people I know that are in that industry, right? And I obviously see music artists and, famous people and all that kind of stuff. And that's, that's the world that most people see. But then there's all this stuff going on in the background. So how did you kind of get into this? Was it, you picked up one client and you just saw the opportunity, or what way did that all work?
Yeah. So, well, I should say first of all that like the services business, what we call the digital transformation business, is still an important part of our business today. And so we really kind of have two elements to our business, what we would call the digital transformation business, which is going to medium and large companies and figuring out, how we can use the latest cloud or AI technology to help transform what they're doing. But in the music industry space with their matching engine product, before I set up Spanish Point with my business partner Donal, I actually, as a software development manager in a systems integration company, designed the first system IMRO ever had, the Irish Music Rights Organization. They'd broken away from PRS because previously, PRS in the UK was the organization for both the UK and Ireland.
Okay. Okay.
So this was, I think, maybe 25 years ago, something like that. So they broke away from the UK to set up IMRO, and they needed to find somebody to write software to do the thing that I talked about. Now, this was pre-digital, so the problems were way easier to solve back then because it's radio and TV and, actual physical,
Pubs and
records
things
and
like that.
yeah,
Is it? Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so the data volumes were way lower. So I designed the first system for IMRO back then, and then when we set up Spanish Point, we quickly developed a specialization in building custom solutions for CMOs around the world, and we did quite a few of those, and then essentially we thought, well, actually, even though everybody thinks they're quite different from each other, there's tons of commonality. Like they're 95% similar, and the 5% that's different, we can do in the one product, but make it configurable so it will work for each market. And we started to build a matching engine, and that's where it really grew from there. So to now, it's just over 50% of the revenue in the company, and it's nearly all international.
Tell me about just the growth of the company kind of to date, right? And it's been a longish journey,
Yeah.
you might say, but um, what did it look like, I suppose, in the first few years? And was there ever a kind of a breakthrough moment, or has it kind of been steady? You mentioned 30% a year, right?
Yeah.
But has it kind of been like that every year, or has it been lumpy, if you like?
Yeah, there's been it certainly hasn't grown 30% every year from the beginning. Like we're this year we're 20 years in business.
So you'd be a
So
lot
it's
bigger.
been yeah, we would be, yeah. If we get the calculator out, but that's the missed opportunity. Yeah, no, so we started out as a services company. Like, so we wanted, well, it's not that we wanted to bootstrap the company, it's we wanted to set up a company. We didn't have any investors. So we had, myself and my business partner had 6 months of savings from our salary from our job in the systems integration company. So we had a very small window in which we needed to make enough money to pay ourselves so we could carry on with our lives. Like I had a young child. I think my son was like, yeah, he would have been 2 years old, but just under 2 years old at the time. So these didn't seem like a big risk at the time. But you look back on it and you think, actually, this was a reasonable risk, right? I had a young family, a mortgage that was reasonably big. I was working in quite a well-paid job, and we just thought that we would do this for ourselves together and around that idea that we talked about. And yeah, and we really kind of progressed it from there. But we had a key moment very early on in the history of the company, which is I think within the first 3 years, we'd less than 10 people in the company, and we won the worldwide Microsoft Partner of the Year award. Um, which I think we were the first Irish partner to ever win the award at the time. And we were tiny, right? We were almost certainly we're the smallest Microsoft partner
And
in
what
Ireland.
how what made you the best if you were the
Yeah.
smallest?
Well, we did a really innovative solution again for the music industry for Imro, the second system Imro ever had, which we won the project for, and we did that thing that I talked about in the beginning, that vision of creating a solution out of combining different elements of enterprise software from Microsoft with a bunch of custom software to build a really kind of compelling business solution. And we developed it. We saw the application for worldwide partner of the year, and we said, "Oh, sure, we may as well go for it." We wrote up a very good proposal, to be fair, about the impact that the solution had, how we built it. And because that really resonated with Microsoft, because it was kind of like, a little bit of what's going to happen in the future, but right now, there's that famous quote, like,
The future is here. It's just
not evenly distributed. That's the
mhm.
one, yeah. So yeah, that was it. So I think that really resonated with them, and that kind of propelled us into a new space. Like, it was a kind of different type of Microsoft partner, one that was software focused and around innovation and driving business value. But there was a funny situation when we won the award. They sent a TV crew from or a video crew from the UK in a van to like do all these kind of video interviews and stuff back at the time. And we were in the Guinness Enterprise Centre, which is a great facility, but like not very glamorous, right beside Guinness's. And they sent the film crew. And we said, "Look, I think it's better if we do the video in the Guinness's kind of storehouse place, because we'd arranged with them that we could do it there because it looked fancy, because their offices were like dreadful. Like, it
Yeah,
was
and
just
I don't know, like even now, I don't know if they've changed since, but the Guinness Enterprise Centre, as you say, it's not the most glamorous place to be bringing a TV crew, I'd
yeah.
imagine. Yeah.
No, so the guys just said, "Oh, no, no, we want to show the gritty reality of tech startups." Then they stuck their head in the door, looked once, and said, "Let's go to that, to that other place." So yeah, so maybe it was a bit too gritty for them at the
Yeah.
time, but yeah, but that really changed the way people thought of us as a company, and that helped propel us. And at that point in time, actually, we had a couple of VC companies got in touch with us, and we had a real decision point to make. So we were growing organically, fully bootstrapped. We were making money each year, but small amounts, but growing in tiny increments, all services based, so customers paid for time essentially. And I remember, I can't remember the name of the VC company, which is probably just as well. And we sat in their fancy office and they said, "Well, look, if we give you money, we'll like really accelerate your growth. And but obviously you have to take more risk, and it'll be kind of boom or bust situation." That was basically the message. And at the time we just thought, well, actually what we're doing is the safest path, and the best path for us. So we just carried on, bootstrapping the company.
At that stage, did you have, an idea or a goal as to where you kind of wanted to get to over the next decade, say, or anything like that? And if you did, have you kind of gotten there or surpassed it, or are you below that? What does that picture look like from what you set out to do versus where you are?
I think the picture has changed. Like, it's not that we didn't have a goal. It's that I probably have 5 goals, and some of them are new every month. But the broad idea was to build a successful services business around the Microsoft platform, and then when we built up enough money, start investing in our own product and make the company international around software. Exactly what piece of software it was at the time, we didn't know. Like, when I was in the systems integration company Mentec before we set up Spanish Point, I was heavily involved in a core product that we built back then that was really successful internationally. And I just felt that this was a thing that was ultimately much more scalable, like to scale through software as well as people, as opposed to scale through people alone. So it was always a an ambition of ours. And we had one false start. We took a bunch of money, like, I think it was, well, it was at least 2, maybe 3 million euros, that we'd built up in the company, and we built this product called Lookup Point, which looked brilliant. I remember I showed it to the Microsoft. product development team in Seattle, the people who built Microsoft Office, because it was the thing that sits inside Microsoft Office. And I got a standing ovation. I rang my business partner. I said, "This is it. We've made it." It's you know, it's like, start looking at new houses now. But it, it just turned out like what we didn't realize, or certainly what I didn't realize, is we built a mass market product that would require like a multiple of what we had in resources to go to market effectively. Like it was a thing that anybody using Microsoft Office around the world would add in to their solution. And yeah, we just didn't have the resources or even the experience to kind of have a global kind of go to market strategy.
But would Microsoft not have, you got a standing ovation by the people who built Microsoft Office, would they not buy it? Or I don't know, was there not something that you could have done there?
Well, we probably could have used your help back then. But no, we spent a ton of money on it. And it was you had to sell a high volume because it was a low cost add-in, and we just weren't geared up for that. But what we really learned is that building a product that adds value and looks great and that customers think is really good. I remember we did a Gartner have these kind of industry shows, and we were on one of those shows, and the head of IT for McDonald's globally in Florida came up and he signed up on the stand to buy the thing. But because it was such a low cost thing and it was just doing an initial test run, we barely covered the cost of attending the conference. But we had amazing engagement and traction. So we thought we were onto an amazing thing. But actually it turned out not to really go anywhere, and we stopped it after a while. But what we learned from that though was, that like having a product that we could build, but also where we had a market that we understood how to attack that market, how to go to market, and what the strategy would be, how we'd sell it, and making sure that we had the resources not only to build a product, but to get it to market successfully was really important. So our second product was the matching engine for the music industry, and it couldn't have been more different in terms of the focus of the market because it was a very defined market, where we already had a clear route to the market. We had referenceability. We kind of had the list of every potential customer in the world for the product. So it was but we wouldn't have done that if we didn't do the first thing. So in some ways, we look back at the money that we spent on the first thing as a kind of expensive MBA.
Well, it's, when I look at some of I mean, when you look at the App Store, right? And, some of the apps that just exploded on the App Store and, everyone made huge amounts of money. You hear about it in the news and you're like, God, that's very exciting. But I don't know at what stage you were doing this, but much harder to do, in a broader sense, is to get that out, as you were
Yeah.
saying, and much easier to build something kind of more custom and niche for a specific market.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, it probably sounds ridiculously obvious in retrospect. But yeah, but like some lessons you learn best by doing them. And actually, you can spend a lot of time thinking about things and analyzing the different options, whereas our approach has always been to do a reasonable amount of thinking and analysis, but also to just go and do it because you learn stuff by doing it. And like even if it doesn't 100% succeed, the stuff that you learn will really help you going forward.
When the music product worked, was that one of these kind of breakthrough moments for you? And kind of what did it feel like personally? Was it like, yes, we've built something now that's working? Was it a kind of uh, not a clap yourself on the back moment, but were you kind of proud of what you had done at that stage?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like and I think where we are today is in a really positive space, and more so, for the team, like because like I'm just one of 120 people in the company, and to kind of get to where we are, like everybody has to be really committed to what we're trying to do. Because in a lot of ways, we're trying to change the way the music industry works around the world. And like we're not in the beginning, actually, I was shy of I always felt that was my ambition inside, but I was afraid of saying it externally because it sounds a bit ridiculous, like that, like some little company based in Ireland is actually trying to change the face of the music industry around the world.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think if you were American, you would have no problem saying that, and everyone seems to say it. And actually, when the Americans say things like that, I don't disbelieve them. I kind of go, yeah, okay, well, you seem to know what you're doing. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because you feel um that, you know, did that change? Did it change from, oh, that couldn't be us, to why not us at some stage?
Yeah, and also I think you have to be a little bit, I've always tried to push myself to be a bit more brave in lots of areas of life. And in the business area, it takes a little bit of courage to say, actually, we're trying to do something really ambitious. It's easier to kind of, lurk in the background and say we're going to inch along like everybody else. So yeah, so we just decided that this is something that we can do and that we will do, and we need to start telling people that this is where we're going. Um, and we are getting there. Like one of the pivotal moments for us in the music industry is the matching engine was selected as the system to operate the international standard for music identification called the ISWC system. And right now, today, it sits on top of the matching engine, and we administer it on behalf of the world governing body for copyright societies around the world. So every piece of music that is created in the world that's got copyright flows through our system. And, it's part of an international standard. It's an ISO standard for like essentially like a barcoding system, if you like, for every copyrighted song in the world. So that was one of the pivotal points where we thought, okay, we're actually having a real impact on how the music industry works right across the world, from Korea, Japan, through to, North America and across Europe. And that gave us the confidence to kind of articulate where we thought we could make a real impact going forward.
And has the shift in mindset, or just kind of being more open about it, do you think that's helping the company and helping you grow the company as such?
Yeah, I think so. No, I think it has to be tempered with reality, right? I'm probably still on the side of understatement. I remember actually is a US customer, and I said at one moment in the presentation that I really don't like to exaggerate things. So, like, I think, this is the efficiency gain you will get. And the American guy at the most senior guy said, "Well, John, it's about time you started exaggerating because everybody else does." And I thought it was unusual advice from a prospective customer, but yeah, no. So we've gotten a lot better about articulating what our vision is and where we're trying to get to, and I think it really helps internally. It really helps everybody understand this is what this company is about. And then when we're recruiting people from university, it's a very clear message and actually quite a differentiated message in a competitive place for talent. So yes, you could work for Google in Ireland, and I'm sure you get paid lots of money and you'd have an interesting job. But would you really change the world working in Google in Ireland? But if you work in Spanish Point, you actually have the opportunity to change how the music industry works across the world. And which is the most exciting proposition for you as a graduate coming out of university who's really interested in the software business?
Talk to me about, so when you won that award from Microsoft, right, and you were 10 people,
Yeah,
okay, and then subsequently you're what, like 12 times the size roughly
yeah,
of that now, and yeah, obviously I'm a
yeah,
mathematician, as
yeah.
you can tell, right, but
Very impressive skills there, Connor.
I didn't have to use a calculator or anything. It was amazing. So roughly 12 times the size. Talk to me about the growth in people and the learnings along the way about hiring people and everything, because I think that's probably, most people would say that that tends to be the hardest part of this whole growing a business thing. Has that been a challenge over time, and what have you learned?
Yeah, it has been a challenge. I think for us, the thing that's worked the best is to find people who are really curious and who are really capable as software engineers straight out of college, and get them involved in what we do and get them to learn a little bit about the way we do things in Spanish Point. And then bring them through their career. We've a lot of people who have been with the company for a very long time, and most of the senior managers in Spanish Point today have been with the company for 10 plus years. Um so that's been an important thing for us, is to build and grow talent internally. For sure, we have needed to get external experienced people in specific areas, and that's worked really well for us too. But we've always had an eye towards developing talent coming out of Irish universities. It was harder, I think, 3, 4 years ago, but I think the pendulum has swung a little bit as the software developers emerging from college today, they want to work in a tech startup. Like, entrepreneurship is actually much more fashionable today than it would have been 10 years ago. And it's not just fashion, it's kind of interesting. People are beginning to see the downsides of, working in a big multinational tech company. Like, there's lots of positives, and don't get me wrong. Yeah, I'm not negative about the impact that's had on Ireland. It's been a really positive impact. But just in terms of your career and learning stuff, I think there's a lot more potential. And I think today's graduates see that. And they also see amazing success stories coming out of Ireland as well.
So I suppose you're kind of going for the younger, maybe more energetic, maybe kind of newer people. What has that brought, a kind of a different energy to the company as such?
Yeah, no, it's kept the like, I'm pretty sure I'm the oldest person in the company. Yeah, I'm 95% certain. It's a good question though, but
We won't out anyone
yeah,
anyway if they're, yeah.
I'll be posting it on the internet when I get back. But yeah, no, so like, it means that the company is very driven. Like, we're really kind of mission orientated. People work very hard, but also like have a good work life balance. We do a lot of activities inside the company to kind of foster that relationship. We do have people come into the office quite a bit because of that kind of mission of trying to change the way the music industry works forever. So like, nobody does that from their bedroom, I don't think, and I think that's working really well. And having developed people over a period of time that we've been in business has helped us develop our company culture in a there's a very clear understanding what our company culture is, and that makes it easier to bring on board new talent.
Different people that sit across from me here have had different challenges growing their business, right? Because it's different personalities, different strengths, different weaknesses. For you personally, what's been the kind of hardest part about the journey?
Yeah, I think there's been different challenges at different points in time. The challenge today is we're growing very rapidly and trying to preserve things that are really important, like our company culture, the way we treat our customers, the way we think about what we do from an engineering perspective. They're all things that have been fundamental to getting us to where we are today, but you have to consciously work at making sure that those cultural things stay in place as you're adding headcount. Like, we've doubled the size of the company in the last 3 years in terms of headcount. So, if you imagine, there's like over half of the people in the company, because obviously we've had some people who've left, um, are within the company less than 3 years. So having that kind of understanding among the managers as to what our culture is, what our values are, and how to consciously work at in getting people to understand that is something that we really try to work at. And it is a challenge, right? But it's something that we really focus on.
You were the CTO of the company for a long time, and quite recently have become the CEO. How did that kind of whole change come about initially?
Yeah, well, my partner Donald, we set up the company together. I was always the technical person, so I was the CTO. Now, when we started up the company, I was the CTO a chief software architect and software developer, and Donald was the CEO. And Donald retired, I think, 2 years ago. So I'm kind of a reluctant CEO, if you could put it that way. And it was never my real dream to be the CEO of a company. Like I've always enjoyed the kind of problem solving, building a team of engineers, that engineering thing. But as we actually transitioned from into more of a product company, it actually, the timing worked out, not through some grand plan that we had at the very beginning, but through probably a bit of dumb luck. I think it makes sense for the company as it exists today to have a kind of product and technical kind of leader because we're a technical product company. And yeah, so it actually, like, I was always heavily involved in customer relationships and stuff, so that element kind of came naturally to me. There's other elements I hadn't been that involved in, but which I've enjoyed actually. It's been an opportunity to do new things, learn new skills. Like I have been like a terrible networker, I would say. In the first 15 years of my career, in Spanish Point, and I've learned, new skills, which I actually really like doing. It kind of pushes me to learn new stuff and try new things. So I've really enjoyed that.
Has any of it been Has any of it been particularly difficult, moving into the CEO? Like, is there anything really new that you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll do that a bit differently than Dodo did it?
Yeah, well, like I always kind of felt early on, and actually I got great advice early on. I can't remember from who, which is dreadful.
We can credit them after if
Yeah,
you like. Yeah.
exactly. If they listen to the
Yeah,
podcast, they
exactly.
can
Yeah,
write in.
yeah.
But I got great advice from somebody who said, like, John, your personality and style is different than other people's. Don't try and change that. Just do what you do in the way that's comfortable for you. So if you're doing presentations, if you're doing public speaking, if you're doing your networking, don't try and imitate what other people who have maybe a personality type that's much more, you know, easier for them in those situations. Just do it in your own way, and being kind of yourself will actually get over, and being genuine about the way you're doing things will actually achieve the same outcome, but just in a different way. And that was a piece of advice that I thought was invaluable,
Yeah,
and I've
like,
followed it.
I'm thinking, I suppose, as you said, kinda entrepreneurship has
Yeah.
become kinda more fashionable, and I think maybe, let's say in the '90s, everyone would have said, "If you're not Richard Branson, you're not really an entrepreneur." Like, that was the kinda archetype that everyone sorta looked at as like, "This is entrepreneurship, and, this over here is not." But, it turns out that, there's so many different types. It's not a personality trait
No.
ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think there's some common factors across entrepreneurs because, like, recently I had a chance to have quite a few meetings with a bunch of like-minded entrepreneurs, and even though everybody's personality is very different, there's something in the core of the way that everybody thinks that's similar, and I can't put my finger on it, but I think there's something there for somebody to try and figure out what is that thing that seems to be in common. Uh, like, it could just be an innate level of optimism, or not really caring so much about how other people perceive what you're doing, or some element along that. But I think there is a thread of commonality, even though people approach it in a much different way from each other.
In order to act in a way that's comfortable for you as the CEO, you have to have a level of self-knowledge as to, what
Yeah.
that is and all of that. Has that been at all a journey for you, or have you always kinda had a good sense of, who you are?
Well, no, I don't like.
Sorry, that is a big question. I apologize for the way it came out, but, I'm kind of wondering, has it been something you focused on, over time?
Yeah, I've thought about it quite a bit actually. Like, you read it, like Jack Dorsey, I think is the most extreme example. These guys, like, who go off for a week retreat, and do all their kind of detailed meditation stuff. So I'm not at all like that. However, like, early on in my management career, I did again a management training course that I cannot remember who did it, but it was a really it was a really insightful one where you kind of learned a bit about how to recognize when you're feeling a bit stressed and how to kind of regulate yourself just through simple kind of thoughts and ideas. And that's something I've brought with me the whole way along. And, I used to get nervous doing, large scale public speaking or even, big customer presentations. And I kind of learned that I don't know who, I think it might have been The Rock or somebody, I don't know, but somebody said that, like, excitement and nervousness are essentially the same thing. Like, they feel the same. You get a little bit sweaty, your heart starts beating faster, your mouth feels a little bit dry. So you just have to think that when you're feeling nervous, actually what you're feeling is excited. And and little things like that have helped me. I know it sounds like the kind of LinkedIn wisdom that you see from
Well,
scrolling through. It's
sorry,
like,
I wouldn't be calling any of that stuff wisdom at the moment. It's just constant barrage of AI slop being
yeah,
pushed out on LinkedIn. But no, like it's very interesting. Like I come across to other people like I'm an extrovert, right? And like I love public speaking now. But before I did Toastmasters 10 years ago, and before I did that, like stood up in my first speech in Toastmasters and was sweating buckets. I couldn't look at anyone in the eye. I was extremely nervous. So it's something. I think it's something that anyone can learn, right? And do you enjoy that side of things now that
I
you've
do.
yeah.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like, I've found, and I think it comes with experience, like, you can have something that you're objectively not good at and that you fear, but if you approach it the right way, you can become reasonably good at it. Even, like, some things I think I'm very good at, but some things I think I'm reasonably good at, because I've learned I'm not naturally gifted in that area. Um but you can become reasonably good at it, and you can begin to enjoy it and begin to look forward to it. And, there is a little bit of changing yourself in order to achieve what you're trying to do. You don't want to change yourself. So, like, I'm not an extrovert, I think is the safest way of putting it. Not naturally, but I can be extroverted when the situation demands it, and I can even enjoy doing it now, which is a thing that I would have never said even 5 years ago, much less 10 years ago.
You spent, as you said, a bit of time with other entrepreneurs. I'm assuming you're talking about the EY Entrepreneur of
Yeah.
the Year program, and you're a finalist this year. So congratulations. What's that been like for you? And how are you enjoying the process?
Yeah, it's actually been great fun. It's really interesting to meet people who are running all sorts of different types of businesses. But we have a kind of an instant bond that's hard to explain, and like people kind of, I'm sure if I was listening to me saying this 2 years ago, I would have said, "Ah, yeah, well, you would say that, right?" But it's a strange thing to instantly kind of connect with people because there's this unquantifiable thing that's kind of similar across all of us that I couldn't explain. But even though we're all different personality wise, we're all different in terms of the businesses we're running. A lot of us had very similar problems, and maybe that's a shared kind of element that connects us. But I think there's this other little kind of spark inside our personalities that kind of ties us together. So that's been a really rewarding thing, and it's a connection that I hope will keep, for years to come.
You've talked about kind of not having this kind of maybe natural, affinity for drawing attention to yourself, maybe or anything like that. But at the same time, kind of since you've taken over as CEO, the company has actually become much more. It's come into the limelight a bit more. Is that part of the strategy as such?
Yeah, well, I think it's part of us growing up, and learning that, if we're going to achieve our goals, we have to be out there explaining what we're trying to do and put our proposition out there really clearly, and communicate to wider stakeholders, whether they be potential customers or potential people who come work for us or potential partners along the way. So it is a conscious strategy, but I think it's it's part of becoming a more mature company that is scaling quickly and kind of accepts that this we're putting ourselves out there where our ambition is really high, and we're not gonna hide that from people going forward.
You've recently taken on a private equity investment. I saw on the news. What's the plan for that investment? If you can, well, tell me what you can exactly.
Yeah, and that's really the other side of that ambition, really. So we've always been just had three shareholders, myself and my two business partners, and other two business partners are retired. So really wanted to. We're at a unique moment in time in Spanish Point, I think, and a unique moment in the marketplace where for the music industry our solution is the market leader, but in a really fast growing market, and a market where we've like less than, I think we're about 7% of the market at the moment. So the rest of the market is just doing old fashioned custom software development. So we've got a real opportunity, but we don't want to lose our position in the marketplace. We want to accelerate into it. And to do that, we need more investment. Um, and private equity is geared up to exactly solve that problem, is to find companies that are profitable, that are in fast growing markets and have a unique solution, and they help finance it so we can grow faster. So even though, like I talked about our decision point back at the beginning of the company around VC funding and how we decided not to do that, we've had the time to build and scale a company to a level now where to get to the next stage, we want some professional money as part of what we do. And so we signed a deal with a really good specialist private equity firm called Aprey in London, and we're really excited about the plans that we have with them. We're really going to grow our product development around the matching engine. We're going to open up an office in the UK, and we're going to do some acquisitions both in the music industry and in the digital transformation services business, particularly in the UK.
And why them exactly? You mentioned they're a specialist, but was that really the reason why you went with them?
Yeah, we ran a process, which was actually great fun as well. It was all stuff that took me out of my comfort zone. But yeah, we ran a process. We had a bunch of people in the final round, all PE firms. They all came in more or less in the same kind of commercial side of things. But we picked Apiary because we felt we had the best kind of synergy with them, and we felt they could help us the most.
You said earlier, kind of looking back at the decision to start the company, that, oh, that actually was a bit risky. Can you remember, like, what was it? Was it kind of exciting? Did you kind of want to be your own boss, be in charge of your own destiny, or was it more, was it more commercial? Was it more that you wanted to make more money? What do you think was the start of the what was your drive basically at the start of the company?
Like, I think in retrospect, it's easy to kind of come up with a very logical kind of description, and I'm nervous of kind of trying to, be codify it too much. But the core feeling was that there was a massive opportunity around this shift in the way software was being built, and it was going to be hard to communicate that shift and get everybody behind us in the organization we were in. Not because, there were great people and it was a great company, but it was a big enough company, about the same size actually as we are today, I'd say more or less. And so it seemed easier for myself and Donald to create a new company around this idea, than it would be to change the existing company. We weren't really thinking of the it and we'll make money ourselves and stuff like that. We were really thinking about this proposition and how it's going to change the way stuff gets developed and how customers will see the benefits.
And before that, had you always wanted to start your own business, or had it come about previously before this, or was it just we see the opportunity, let's go for it?
Yeah, like I grew up on a family farm in County Meath, so every farmer is a business person. So like when I was growing up around the kitchen table, you just the basics of running the business are just part of everyday life. It's not something I appreciated at all when I was growing up. I couldn't wait to get off the family farm. But actually, it meant it wasn't scary. Do you know? Because like I kind of understood, the whole buying, selling, customer stuff, they're all things that every farmer has to understand in order to make a living. So that gave me a background, and then obviously I went to university, in DCU, computer applications or computer science degree, and technically, it was always the area I was most comfortable in. So you combine those two things, and you think, okay, like this is straightforward. Let's just go and do it.
John Corley, it's been a pleasure having you in today. What does the future hold for Spanish born technologies, and uh, are you excited about it?
Yeah, no, like, super excited in terms of what's ahead of us. Like, it's a real point of growth for the company as we expand out. So what we're aiming to do, obviously, is in our digital transformation business, really go after the UK market through a combination of acquisitions and opening a new office. And then in the music industry side, really try and extend our lead in that space and really try and change the face of the music industry around the world.
John Corley, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks a million. Really enjoyed it.